This has been a classic tilapia bread and butter. Get 50 minutes out of a topic that people would thought impossible to get 50 minutes out of. But as much as I've enjoyed it, how much of this do teachers need to know?
So I think it's really useful for teachers to have a sound grasp of what a phoneme is, what a grapheme is, what a morpheme is, and the role that they play in English orthography. Now, if they forget the word orthography and just talk about our writing system, that's absolutely fine. It's not a problem. But understanding how our writing system works, I see as fundamental to being as capable as you can possibly be in teaching, reading, writing, and spelling, regardless of the age of the pupils you work with. I think it helps to understand the depth of English orthography and thus potentially to some extent where that comes from, so that we recognize why it might be that pupils will struggle and why we need to persevere. I think all of the practical implications that come from this stuff are obviously things that teachers need to understand. And I think it's easier to remember the practical implications and to not go off the rails with them if you know where they come from. You don't just end up teaching morphology as this separate, almost like distilled subject. You're teaching it as a real life component of how we use our writing system. The short answer then is, I think we spend most of our teaching time to some extent trying to help pupils become experts in English orthography. We might not put it in those terms, but we're getting them to learn how to read it. We're getting them to learn how to write it. And so I don't think there's any wasted time in learning more about how that orthography actually works.
I agree with Chris. There's lots of niches that we've talked about. Like, do I want English primary school teachers to have a test on how English language came to be? No, I don't. Do I want them to know that it's made up of the smallest unit of sounds, the phoneme, and within that there are these kind of larger units of sound that carry some meaning? Yes, I do. Do I want them to know which of these I want them to teach? Yes, I do. Would I like there to be a curriculum that says, here are some good bets because they're high frequency in tier 2 language, or in this corpus of literature that's designed for key stage 2, key stage 3 children? These are the highest percentage of affixes that we used, and so make sure they know what those mean. Absolutely. Anything more than that is a lovely bonus. I think people should. But do they need to? Modal verb there. No.
Yeah, totally agree. In terms of, what teachers absolutely need to know, there is a bare minimum around kind of understanding of phonemes, graphemes, morphemes, practical implications relating to those. That is absolutely fine. One thing I would say is that there's a lot of talk in education about curriculum, and we talk about it in depth, and we kind of talk around it in the end, and we end up completely forgetting that there are incredibly valuable subjects that just barely get a look in, mainly because of historical accident. If we were designing a curriculum from scratch, the idea that philosophy and economics and psychology wouldn't figure in most people's education at all until they get to A level would be absurd, I think, to most people. And yet it happens. I would argue that linguistics, understanding a bit about our language, how it works, how it relates to our writing system, is one of those things that's worth dropping into the extra bits of the curriculum. It might not have a subject, but why not have that knowledge so you can support your pupils to understand these bits and pieces? I think back in the day, it used to be called the hidden curriculum, and I'd be perfectly happy for bits of linguistics, some of the stuff perhaps that we've talked about today, to be part of that hidden curriculum across primary schools.
Very quickly, I would love, there's that unit of work that you can do in Key Stage 2 history, which is you take a theme or a topic from 1066. I might be a bit naughty and have a couple of lessons that go just before 1066. When I say just before, a couple of thousand years, not too much. But literally that is the history of writing and reading, because I think that'd be a really interesting topic from a historical perspective, because you can go back, not only can you go back to revisit some of those ancient civilizations and regular civilizations that you've taught about, but you can kind of add that extra layer of depth and understanding that comes with then studying, and that which Chris and I have talked about.
Wonderful. I mean, I think the more you know, the more you can use it in your instruction and your planning. I think that's what's come across to me. Because lots of the incidental stuff feeds your focus in other areas, in the less incidental and the more sort of impactful stuff. So I think it's really important. And like I say, I certainly enjoyed it. It was like going back to basics, and I'm looking forward to the next chance to really tear the English language apart. I'm trying to think what that might be. But until next time, all I have to do is say thank you very much. Thank you very much, Neil.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chris.
Always a pleasure.
And to everyone at home, until next time, thanks for listening.
Right. I really need to go.